Hi guys, welcome back to Art for Heart. I'm Hafsah and today is going to be part 2 of my classical drawing series. So last time we had value and today we're talking about shadow. Stay tuned still for form and shape and then our series will be finished up and that's super exciting. But yeah, today is fun, as fun as classical drawing gets. Honestly, I already told you guys it is the dreary part of drawing, but either way, shadows, so fun. Basically, shadows are encompassed in value, which is why they're kind of like, they're pretty similar, but since shadows are so important in drawing, I was like, you know what, we're just gonna make another video to talk about specifically the dark part of value, which is shadows. And yeah, today we're not actually gonna be doing like shadows on the ground that you'll see, like how to draw those, because honestly, to learn how to do those properly, you kind of got to work in like 2-point or 1-point perspective or something like that, and then you can talk about like light direction and light angle, and that's just a whole thing for another time, and I'll definitely make a video on that soon because it's an important technique to learn. But honestly, with most of those shadows, you can just eyeball it at some point, even though it's great to learn the technique. It's totally okay to just eyeball. That's what it's like with most of art. Like, do you even need to measure? You can just eyeball. Like, who even cares? I mean, yeah, that's probably not like a good thing to say like during an art tutorial, but yeah, eyeballing is never a bad thing. But basically with shadows today, instead of doing like shadows on the ground or whatever, we're going to be talking about shadows in like shadows on objects, so like darks on objects. Basically today specifically we're going to be using a face, so if you don't know how to draw a face, go check out my face drawing tutorial, which is linked below, and you can kind of get a quick summary and we can jump right into it. But first, we're gonna roll the intro. Alright, so we're back here at the art history corner, and guys, I'm telling you, the setup keeps on getting worse and worse each time. Oh my god. But yes, anything for art history, am I right? So we are talking about shadows today, right? So shadows, art history. The biggest connection here is going to be Rembrandt lighting. So Rembrandt, I'm sure you've heard of him, very famous painter, he's known for all those self-portraits. I think he has like, a lot of people say he has 600 paintings in total, but I think more recent studies have said that it's more like 300. So we're not sure, probably 300 is right. But basically he was this Dutch golden age painter, which happened in the 17th century. That was when the golden age was, so that was when he was, just for some time context. And basically he is known for using this one technique called Rembrandt lighting. It's named after him because I guess he popularized it. What he did with this technique was that he would have a face, kind of like straightforward, maybe a little bit faced to one way, and half of the face would be dark and the other half would be light, and there would be this dramatic contrast between the dark and the light. But what Rembrandt lighting is most known for, and its most identifiable characteristic, is this thing called the Rembrandt patch, and it's basically, I don't have the right lighting to show it, but it's like if the face is like this, and you have this side is dark and this side is light, this triangle underneath the eye next to the nose, that is the Rembrandt patch, and it's like this triangle of light against the dramatic dark of this side of the face. And basically this triangle, it should be no longer than the nose and no wider than the eye. So yeah, that's basically what it is. There's this technique, it's division between light and dark, basically shading, and this technique is called, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, chiaroscuro. Yeah, I definitely butchered that. But basically, chiaroscuro is basically just shading. It's like this contrast between light and dark, you're using value, like my last hitter, using value to create this illusion of 3D quality and realisticness. So that's basically what chiaroscuro is. It is a classical canon technique of the Renaissance. So it was really important in the Renaissance, along with some other techniques, which we'll talk about at a later time. But it was notably used by this guy named Caravaggio. He was an Italian painter, and he used this very dramatized form of chiaroscuro, which later came to be known as tenebrism. And it's basically where you're still having this dramatic division between light and dark, but dark becomes like a prominent element of the painting. So your painting is mostly dark, and then you're having this like amount of light in there. It's a really interesting technique. Like, some of the paintings in it are really cool. I think the style is very interesting, and it just creates this like emotional effect. It draws you in, and that's also kind of what chiaroscuro does in some forms. It's like, while it is essentially shading, you do use it to create this dramatized effect, and especially with Rembrandt lighting, like this patch of light against the dark, that like ups the wow factor, I guess. It makes it very noticeable, very dramatized. So yeah, that's what we're talking about today, and I'm gonna guide you through how to use some of these techniques and how to use shadows in general on a face. So let's get into that. Alright, so the materials needed today are the same as always. It's just going to be a piece of paper, a pencil, and some type of eraser. Mine's just on my pencil. So we're going to start off today with drawing a face. So I already have a tutorial on how to draw a face, so I'm not going to talk about it here, but I'm just going to draw a very simple one just to get us started. And the tutorial, if you need to... So now that our face is finished, let's start talking about shadows. So the first thing you need to know about shadowing a face is that there are 5 main shadows on the face. So there's shadows for the eye sockets, there's a shadow under the nose, and there's a shadow on the top lip, and there's a shadow below the lip. So that's our 5 shadows, with the notable addition of the shadow underneath the face where the neck is coming, but that really isn't like a face thing, I guess. So yeah, those are the 5 shadows. So on every drawing you do, you need to add those shadows in some shape or form. Of course, if you're dealing with something that's like akin to Rembrandt lighting, and this side of the face is super dark, and this side of the face is super dark, and this side of the face is super light, clearly this eyeshadow isn't going to be as prominent as this one, but generally those remain consistent. I'm just going to erase that guideline. Okay, so first thing that we're going to talk about is, what can shadowing do to the face? So the place where you put your shadows really affects what this face is doing. So right now this guy has like a neutral expression. Here, we can add in some eyes really quickly. Okay, so right now he just has a neutral expression. He's chilling, he's whatever. And I also didn't put hair on the face just because I want to be able to shadow like the forehead too. So that's why he was saying shadow, but it's like shade. But you know what I mean. So yeah, I didn't put hair on the forehead because I wanted to be able to shade the forehead. And yeah, so yeah, he has a neutral expression. Let's say that we added a shadow around the eyes. Let's just try that quickly. I'm sorry about the big shadow that my hand is giving off. It's very annoying, and I have like my lamp set up and whatever because the natural lighting today is so bad, but I don't know, it's just not working out that well. Okay. Okay, so I just added a shadow around his eyes, and yeah, it does look like he has a black eye, let's be honest, but when you add shadows to the rest of the face, this gives the illusion of like he's very mad,
or it's like a foreboding sort of thing. You know, it's just generally not like a positive, happy, go lucky sort of shadowing effect. Okay, so that's kind of one thing to keep note of. Okay, and then let's say we wanted to go for something like Rembrandt lighting. So before we start shading the full face, I want to talk about shapes and shadows. So it's another topic of this video. So with the shadow, we already kind of have some shapes. So we have this shape, and we're going a little bit lighter. Then we have this shape. Especially when you're talking about like shading cheeks and stuff, you kind of just start pressing. You press a little bit lighter, and you kind of get it into shapes. Like how is the structure of the face? What is the structure of the face? How is it going to look? And you kind of do that according to the shapes of your highlights and the shapes of your shadows. So something like this, you know, it shows that he kind of has some cheekbones. You know, I mean, if we wanted to make it totally round, we would not have this, and I would shade up here. But, you know, let's illuminate his cheekbones. So we have something like that. And then, of course, you're going to have your shadows coming down from the nose. Remember, your nose is like protruding, so there's going to be shadows there that are anchoring it. So yeah, and then here I'm just bringing it down, and then I'm going to shade lighter up here. And then if I went darker here, let's say I wanted to leave like some Rembrandt's triangle sort of thing. Okay, so of course this is a rudimentary shading job, but you know, it'll do. So when we're checking our Rembrandt's triangle, remember the guidelines that I mentioned at the start of the video. Is this triangle longer than the eye? And is it wider than the nose? And if it's not doing either of those two things, it's good. Or I mean, it's supposed to be longer than the nose and wider than the eye. I don't know what I'm saying. But yeah, so here we go. And see, like that's like a very dramatic effect. And of course, like can make this darker. Something like that. So that's kind of like, and you can see that if I kind of just started shading the other side, and of course we'd go a little bit lighter, and I'd make this eye socket a little bit lighter just because this face, the light source is clearly hitting this way, so we wouldn't get that much darkness here. You know, it's a very dramatic shading effect, right? Like you're drawn to the darks and to the lights. And that's like the point of this sort of technique. It really dramatizes the drawing. So yeah, and make sure to pay attention to shapes. So this one, like that's a shape there. We're keeping that shape in, right? Because I guess this guy just has defined cheekbones. So think about that sort of thing. Okay, and then here you can look at like this upper lip. I already put it in, but you have to know that this is a shadow in of itself. Sometimes people will go and just do a more detailed upper lip. For our purposes, we're just going to keep it as a shadow. But look at the shape of that shadow. We're totally defining the upper lip with a singular shadow. And that's really important because it, by not drawing too much attention to the upper lip because it's so much in shadow and because it's very simple, we kind of let the other aspects of our drawing take the spotlight. So you have to think about that. Like, where do you want to keep the details and where do you not want to? A lot of times I see people, especially more stylized forms of art, like you can get rid of some details in the shadows because they kind of get swallowed up. Although as, you know, in like our society with photography and all that sort of thing, we're really used to seeing people in shadows having like very defined features and all. It's still like a very good choice to make your shadows have less detail. And it can kind of bring about a whole different effect in of itself and emphasize the fact that there are shadows. And here down here, we're defining the whole bottom lip with a singular shadow. And I think that's another really cool thing. I can erase this guideline. And yeah, see, like You can, of course, feather it out a little bit. But see, this is a really prominent shadow shape. And that's kind of what we're looking for. And then here, we're going to define the whole chin with, see, and now we have like the shape of the chin put in with this shadow. And we can kind of just feather that out, and yeah. Remember, under the nose is going to be a huge shadow. Not a huge, but it's one of the defining shadows of the face, like I mentioned earlier. It's one of the 5. So kind of like that. And then usually you'll notice around lips, they have a little bit of highlight. But basically what I'm trying to demonstrate is that shadows have shapes. And already we're kind of getting with our shapes of our highlight. Go in with that a little bit more. Okay. Is that, you know, you can create a really dramatized effect. And how we noticed with the eye sockets like that created, you know, it made the face look somber or scared. You know, it portrayed a different emotion than it would have been if the eye sockets were very light. And of course, there are other ways you can do that. Like, if we really wanted to make our guy, you know, since we're already going for like the dark eye sockets and the dramatic lighting, we want to make him look scared, we'd still need to change some stuff on the face. Of course, shadows don't do everything for us, but they do a lot. So if we just want to change the eyebrows to be furrowed down a little bit more. No, I do not like that. Okay. So if we just did that, and then we change them to furrow down a little bit more, or however you want. Whatever, now they're a little bit uneven, but it's okay. And then we want to redefine our darks in this area. And then at the bottom of the eye, there technically isn't a dark, but like kind of the underneath eyelid. And then, of course, don't forget, like, you have that little fatty part under your eye, which is like your bottom eyelid, I guess, and it's holding in your eye, so you don't want to forget that. Basically, what you get is like this very dramatized effect, and if we wanted to continue building it up, just keep on finding those shapes. And if you're working from a photo reference, you will find those shapes. And here I shaded a lot, and I kind of want to bring out more highlight again, so I'm gonna keep on going with that. Alright, and then when we get to the forehead, here's another chance to look at really great shapes. So we have this dark shape, and it's kind of coming around. And then we're just gonna go a little bit lighter, because now we're kind of fading in towards near the highlight, which might be like around here or something like that. And then, you know, you kind of have to look for where your lights are, because, you know, this highlight here is always going to be there. I mean, not always, but with the way the light source is going to, the way the light source is set up in this video, it's going to be there. And here we'll have a little bit of shading here, just because we're giving that illusion of 3-dimensionality. Then if we bring it around, it's just like that. And this is, of course, again, very rudimentary. Here we can erase some of our guidelines or whatever. And of course, it's very rudimentary, and I don't want to say, of course, this isn't a full piece or anything, but, you know, you really just need to start looking at different planes of the face and where there are shadows. And you can apply this to pretty much any object. Like, for example, if you wanted to draw like an apple and you wanted this dramatized effect on the apple for whatever reason, you would make a really big contrast between the lights and the darks, and your apple might have like on, I don't know, what's this top part where it's like smoothed out or whatever, and then you have like the stem there. You know, you might, like, if this is the dark part and this is light, you might add like a little highlight here just to make it have that effect, kind of like what we have with Rembrandt lighting and the Rembrandt patch. So here you can kind of see how this is akin to some of his work and the way he uses lighting. And of course, yeah, that's like another way to do it. So of course, if you wanted to try different things, such as like, you know, sometimes when people have eyes, just draw a quick eye here. And then we have our eyelid. Eyeball. I don't know why the eyelid got so deformed. And then kind of just like a fatty under eye part. You know, sometimes if the lighting is coming from underneath, you're gonna get like a very much like a triangle type thing underneath the eye, kind of encompassing it, and it looks really cool. You know, kind of gives like the eerie vibe. You know, when you're telling spooky stories and like you put the flashlight underneath your face, it's kind of like what the vibe of this is, and you'll just come around a little bit. And then, you know, like with your, oh my god, that is a god-awful eyebrow. Well, whatever, okay. And if you drew that, and of course, again, rudimentary, but it's just kind of a way to think about how you can use lighting to portray different expressions, to portray different feelings, to give your viewers different feelings. Here, you know, this guy, if we evened out some of his features, we made his mouth downturned a little bit. You know, he looks foreboding. Like, what's he scared of? Right, that's kind of the vibe we're getting here. You know, what's he afraid of? What's he worried of? You know, and of course, adding in the shadows to your eye helps quite a bit with building that story. Yeah, it's like, you know, here he is, he's looking, he looks scared, like this lighting is coming from here, and there's all these dramatic shadows, and, you know, I mean, I guess you might see this in real life, but of course, it's overly dramatized, you know, for the purpose of the style. But yeah, that's the feeling it gives viewers, and that's kind of what I wanted to portray in this video. Like, shadows can do that to faces. They really help create emotion, they help give your viewers a feeling, they help give your, you know, your work itself a feeling. And they really bring life to your work. So, you know, we're like grounding him with this under the neck shadow. And of course, this wouldn't be as heavily shaded, right? Because this is light. You know, you might get something that's more like here it's shaded, and then it's kind of going around his Adam's apple a little bit. And I just kind of blended it out. But yeah, so I mean, that's like a very rudimentary tutorial into what you can do. And, you know, of course, then I'd go back in and I'd make my darks darker. You know, we can always go darker. You know, make my upper lip darker too. Make these eye sockets darker. And the darker you go, the more dramatic it gets. So yeah, and it's all about building upon each other and creating these shapes within the shadows. But yeah, I mean, I hope this video really gave you like an introduction to like what shadows can do and how powerful they can be in your drawings. So yeah, when you're drawing, always look out for the shapes of shadows. If you have your photo reference, look, where are the shadows? What are the shapes of those shadows? And how can I put those shadows in to give me you know, that emotion and that feeling that I want my piece to have. So yeah, I really hope this helped. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, give some feedback. Check out our website too. Everything really helps. And yeah, stay tuned for the next few parts of the series, and I will see you next time.